All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Denis, and I'm going to talk about templates today together with Fatih. I'm a part of the core engineering team here in Stockholm. Fatih, you work for the advanced services at Cisco, right?
Fatih Ayvaz, I work for Cisco Advanced Services. I will be making a short demonstration after Denis.
This is our agenda for today. First, I'll start with template language enhancements, which is a feature that appeared in NCS 4.5. And
Very good. So we just divided up into two tracks, right? So this track is about news in NSO, and it's going to be about templates, then something called CDM, and then about LSA. If those terms sound very familiar and you want to know all about what's happening with those, you should be in here. If it sounds somewhat cryptic, what I just said, you may want to be in the other room. The other room is just outside here, out the doors on the side, and up the stairs in the 5-6 room. I'll give you 10 seconds if you want to switch. But otherwise, we'll continue here with all the deep stuff. Thank you. So Denis, please.
Yes, cool. So I'll start with the template language enhancements, and then we'll follow up with a demo of a real-world example that uses this feature, and then we'll cover two other features, or one package and one NCS feature related to templates. So, template language enhancements. As I said, this is a feature in NCS 4.5. Let's start with a little background and remind you what templates is. So this is one mechanism for writing your services, for example. What it means is you write XML according to the device's model. And then in this XML, you can use values just like you would use otherwise, or you can use XPath expressions for the template engine to do some processing and compute values based on some other values in the database. So in contrast to writing Java or Python code, templates allow you to templates is a declarative way of writing services, and not the imperative. We think that it's simpler to write templates than it is to write code, and more understandable. So there is certainly some advantages of templates. But there is a disadvantage. It is limited. You cannot express everything you want with the templates. There is no complex logic. You cannot reach out to external database or even do simple control flow stuff, such as conditional execution or loops. There is certain support for that, such as implicit iteration when you use node set as a list key, or you have when and for each expressions on certain XML nodes. So this is some control flow statements, but otherwise, most of the time, many of you have to resort to Java or Python code and then invoke templates from there. This is a pattern that we often see. But we think that expressing the service in a template alone is easier to understand. It's more straightforward. So what happens now is you have a loop in your code that under a certain condition applies a certain template. And it just becomes a little hard to follow for someone who didn't try this service. Having the same loop in a template where you iterate over a certain XPath expression that clearly indicates that we are iterating over a certain set of values in the database is more clear. And that's what we try to do with template language enhancements. So it is an extension over the templates as it used to be, and by introducing these new statements, we make it applicable to a large range of problems, larger, although it is still limited. So you cannot query your external database for a value, unfortunately. So this set of enhancements is implemented using a thing called XML processing instructions. This is a standard feature of XML defined in the XML specification. And what is a processing instruction? It's a certain expression that looks like a little strange XML tag that gives instructions to the XML parser on how to process the XML data. So a few instructions that we introduced allow you to, for example, introduce new variables or change the value of a variable at runtime. And there is certain control flow statements like if for each. And now we allow you to explicitly change context in which the XPath expressions are evaluated. And there is a convenience instruction that allows you to copy a configuration tree if the model is the same. So, as I said, processing instructions is a method to tell the parser on how to process XML data. So this is not something that CDB supports, and it's not intended to be stored in CDB, which in turn means that this is a feature for API and service templates only, not for device templates. This is also a reason why we keep the when and for each expressions for backwards compatibility, but also for use in the CDB templates and device templates. So now I have a couple of slides that demonstrate how it looks like, and I go through all the processing instructions that we have introduced. First one is an if. It's a conditional statement, same as Python and Java, as you would imagine. It used to be called when and be an attribute on an XML tag. That is a little bit incorrect use of XML tags, and also for unification of interface, we decided to make it a processing instruction. So it looks like this now, a tag that starts with a question mark and then the name of the instruction, and then the parameter is an XPath expression. Used to be when shutdown, now it's if shutdown, and it's not on a node. You can have multiple XML nodes under this instruction. You may have an else clause if you want. For each instruction is basically the same as for each expression, but again, you can have multiple tags under this instruction until the end. Unlike previously, it used to be on a single XML tag. Now, this is something that didn't exist before. This is a for loop that you encounter in classic languages, and it allows you to iterate over by a variable. So not necessarily over the node set as the for each loop does. So in this example, we shut down a range of interfaces by iterating over the interfaces index. The variable is declared when the loop opens in the initial step, and it is erased after the loop has finished, so it doesn't exist after the loop. And yeah, you may skip the variable and have a while loop instead by omitting the initial and the step parts. The processing instruction called set allows you to declare new variables and change the value of the existing variables. And again, I should say that as with most processing instructions that I'm talking about here, the scope of visibility is inside the tag the function is used. So in this case, the instruction is used inside the interface tag, so it exists until the tag is closed. But after the closing interface tag, this variable is erased. It's not visible there. And then this example is pretty much the same as in the previous slide, the for loop, except here we declare the variable before the loop, and we use the while style loop, as was mentioned in this slide. Yeah, one important comment about variables is that variable value is always of type string. We do not recognize numbers or booleans or something like this. And it matters when you do comparisons. So imagine you have two variables. One has the value of 11, another one is 9. 9 will be greater than 11 because string 9 is greater than string 11. So if you want to do this kind of comparisons, you have to explicitly convert the type in XPath using XPath built-in functions. But in this example, we compare a string variable with the number, and then it is implicitly converted to a number for comparison according to XPath rules. Now there is a few instructions to manipulate the XPath context, and this is both to avoid very long XPath expressions by you can think about it like a cd command in Linux. You can always give the full path to the file, but what you usually do is you move to a certain directory and work with files there. So same here. You can change the execution context and then use shorter XPath expressions. And it is important to keep in mind that there is two contexts. One is the context in which relative XPath expressions are evaluated. That is the ones that do not start with a slash. And the other one is absolute XPath expressions. Set context node only changes the relative, the current context, which is used for relative, but this set root node is used for the absolute expressions. So as you see, we can make the devices the new root node, and then we access the device with a slash in front because the devices is our root. So you can think of it as a chroot Linux command. So one important note about this instruction is that the root node, when you give an absolute XPath expression as a parameter for the set root node, the root for this expression is the root of the whole database. So this is one problem that existed before. We were kind of locked to the service tree. We started in a service template. We started with a root node that was the service root. So it was we could not escape out of this. Now we can change the context to somewhere outside the service subtree. save context and switch context is also two instructions that help us manipulate the context if you want to avoid specifying if you want to alternate between different contexts and want to avoid specifying the expression for them every time, then you can save the current context, temporarily switch to some other subtree, evaluate a few XPath expressions there, and then switch back with the switch context. Copy tree is something that we see used sometimes when either service modeled after the service model is constructed after the device model, or in LSA applications where you have identical service model on the upper node and on the lower node, then copy tree is something that could be helpful. So it works when the model of the source is a subset of the destination model. And then instead of specifying all the tags one by one, we could use this copy tree. There is a downside though, in that we cannot validate this at load time. So if your if your source tree is not a proper subset of the destination tree, then it is going to fail at runtime, unfortunately. Yes, and the last few words about how to debug all this complex stuff. As you know, there is in CLI there is a pipe debug template, pipe command that prints you certain messages as it evaluates templates. Now there is more messages for each of the processing instructions, so use debug template. And with this,
Thank you, Dennis. Based on this explanation on the enhancements in the template, I will be showing a real-life example. I think one of the phrases that I could catch in the morning was, we wanted to see some real-life examples in this NSO Developers Day. So this is one example I would like to share with you. One important background is the package that I'm going to show you will be for production purposes, definitely. And that is designed to correct ISIS metrics for uplink ports. So this is the background information. With this in mind, let's take a look. Template. So this is the template that I'm talking about. I will go through quickly for the features that Dennis just explained. I'm really glad to use these for loops in this powerful way. In my example, my uplink interfaces are on particular interfaces, all the way from 6/ to 7/. These are my uplink interfaces for the given device. So using this for loop, I do a nested for loop from all the way from 6 and up to the 7, also including the port names, 6/0 all the way to 6/7, then 7/0 all the way to 7/7. So I'm making a for loop. So I'm going through all the interfaces. Then, using the set root node that Dennis just mentioned, I would like to set my context with this absolute path to a particular place, again using the variables in my for loop, as you see, in a very nice way. Using this, I will have the power to evaluate this particular piece. If it exists, then I go through this if construct, then I go and manipulate my value in the template with this one. So simply what I'm trying to achieve is, within this interface, since my goal is to correct ISIS metrics, if ISAS metric is not protected by a particular value, which is 63 for my example. So customer says 63, therefore that's going to be untouched. So we can use such kind of filters. If it is not, I'm going to change it. And if that particular value doesn't exist, and I'm going to create and set it. So this is what the template will do. This particular example, I didn't, of course, quantify in a very scientific way, but saved us 1/3 of the total package code. Since this is a production code, it has a nice reporting capability. So I didn't get rid of the total Python, to be honest. But that's for my particular use case. And this is a demonstration piece. So these are my interfaces, 6 slashes all the way to 7s. I give you this example with different parameters already set. And my particular goal is to walk through all these interfaces. Whenever I see ISAS metric level 1, like this, if it is not protected, meaning that if it is not 63, I'm going to correct it to the value which I want to set, which is 30 in my example. So this is a one candidate interface to be corrected. This will not be touched. 30 will be touched, yes, because it has ISAS metric level 1 and it has none value. So we will go all the way through this, and this is implemented in an NSO action. I'm not using an NSO service. This is an NSO action. So let's run this for this device. This is the reporting feature or reporting capability that I'm talking about. I didn't touch any template yet, but I just reported which interfaces are exempted, which interfaces are incorrect. Then when I do run this with commit dry run, it gives the desired output to me. So this is the demonstration I wanted to share with you. Any question is welcome. So this is one example of how to use these template enhancements in an NSO action. Yeah, please.
Hi. So in the for loop, can you, instead of using less than 8, can you read the value from the model or pass it from Python?
I think, why not? Actually, here is the place that I'm using in another construct. So these are coming from my service,
Okay,
action.
So in the for loop, I could read the value I is equal to a variable in my Yang model. I mean, I could use it like that.
Yeah. So in the initial step, you could start with so you could type something like I equals, and then in the curly brackets, the XPath expression that reads from the database. Sure.
Thanks.
My question is around the set context tree. So if you set a context for devices, then the transaction is limited to those devices, or could you achieve parallelism using that?
Well, no, the parallelism is a little different topic. So NSO will not execute the critical section of the transaction in parallel. So it doesn't.
So the set context with the set of devices, even though you set these devices that are going to be affected by that service, you'll still lock other devices.
Well, I mean, if you want to push to different devices in parallel, you could use commit queues, but that's a little bit different discussion.
Yes. Okay.
Is there anything preventing you from later expanding this to arbitrary execution of code given a particular namespace context? I mean, can you do dynamic function call type actions here. If you just expand upon it, if you give the developer access to a particular other part of NSO where they can write that code, then you could execute it from here given a variable as input to the code you want to execute, and in that way get database integration as well.
Right, so some sort of callback, right? Where you can call your own code from a processing instruction. Well, we don't have such plans for now, but maybe we can look into it.
I was just curious if there was anything in the sign that provided you going down that path.
I'm not ready to answer this question now.
Fair enough.
The problem here is that it's a side effect. We try to avoid any side effects. We encourage not to use sync froms inside of service crates and all of that. So it's a dangerous path to go, at least.
A couple minor questions. One is definitely we are coming up with better constructs like replacing when with if, right? And at this point, probably my assumption is we will keep supporting both moving forward so that it does not break what we have already developed.
Yes, it is supported, but it is not encouraged to use anymore. Okay. So, and if you start using the new style, then you should convert. I mean, in a certain template, you should not mix the old style and the new style.
And the second one, which is also a minor comment, is since like we are using the set statements, and what it is defining strings instead of the other numeric or other variables, right? The set statements that we are putting in the template, those set statements are defining string variables.
Well, you can still have an XPath expression there, but the result of the evaluation will still be converted to a string.
Right, right. So the only thing was, as like a regular developer, looking at the code, the first thing you will see is the definition is telling it is numeric, the way we are defining. So if we change the definition a little bit, so at the time of definition, a new developer who will look at the code, they will know exactly what is going on, right? Because right now we see set variable name equal to whatever the value is. If we put double quotes or some restriction which is telling at least, just a comment,
Yeah. But I mean, everywhere else in the templates, we don't use quotes, so it feels inconsistent.
We are done with the questions, then we can switch back to these slides. Next topic is ntool, which is very cool. And I'm really pleased to talk about this while Dan Sullivan right here sitting. He is the one who created this tool and introduced us. So the benefits of this ntool is simply it really simplifies the generation of the XML templates. It saves time, especially whenever you need to upgrade your net with the Neve net version. If you need to recreate your XML template, just use this tool and it will create automatically the templates for you. It really simplifies. All you need to do is you need to create your config file. You need to put it into a particular place, and you just need to say which net it will be used with. Then you just run the tool. We don't have a demo for this. We will just tell you the features and benefits of this. And the features are, it is an NSO action in a standalone package, so you can just download it from the place that I showed you in the other introduction slide. Just download it and just like any other package, load it to the NSO and use it. And CLI config commands can easily be variabilized. So similar to how you do the templates, you just use this curly braces, and put your variables inside or substitute them. And one good thing or good feature about this is it currently supports most of the common CLI nets. But don't worry if it doesn't support one. You can easily edit the file, one file, and you can just put your new net into it. This is an example how it is used. The command looks like this: ntool CLI template package and your service package. And in this service package, if you have put your CLI configuration in the right place, it will find it, it will run it, and it will generate the XML template for you. And the generated XML template will look like this. So it's a pretty cool tool. Next one is templatize.
Yes, this is another feature in NCS that I'm going to say a few words about. So this is a built-in feature. It's implemented as a CLI command, templatize a certain path. And what it does is it tries to help you develop or start with your service development by looking at a certain part of configuration and trying to find patterns in it. If you have a device with say multiple interfaces that need to be configured in a certain similar way, it will try to find those similarities and produce some XML that you can use to start developing your template. So most of all, it's not something you will be ready to use, but at least some skeleton to start with. So to take a look a little bit under the hood, a few words on the algorithm. So first of all, at least two instances of a certain subtree need to exist in order to find similarities. Otherwise, there is not much to search for. You can just, if you only have one instance, you do a show config on it and show XML and take that. And then what it does is it looks for elements that exist in all of these subtrees, but do not necessarily have a certain value. So if, as in this example, interfaces had a different metric value, it would be replaced by a variable, and the mechanism would suggest you to use this variable in your template. But of course, it is not aware of the semantics of the configuration. So some patterns that may be obvious to you as a service developer, it may fail to find. So here is a small example. Say we have this list called group, and there is two instances under it. When we try to templatize the config for such device, it will. So it says that under the list group we have two instances with different keys. So it replaces this key with a variable, and under it we have a list user that also has different keys, and to replace this key with a variable, and UID has a different value, so it becomes a variable too. So this is something to aid you in the service development and help you start with templates. That's all we have. So if you have any questions, you're welcome.
No questions then.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fatih.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.